What's happening, everybody? On today's show, it is National Signing Day. What to watch for as we go around the conference, and some big news coming out of the transfer portals. Kentucky gets their next starting quarterback and running back. LSU scooped up a D-line trio. Trey Knox jumps over to Columbia. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. All right, I know it's signing day. We're going to get to all the recruiting stuff in just a little bit, but we got tons of other news to get to first. So let's do it. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Makes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
Former North Carolina State quarterback Devin Leary is heading to Kentucky. A big pickup for the Wildcats and Mark Stoops with the departure of Will Levis heading off to the NFL draft. Saw a little bit of Kaya Sharon this year. Didn't look great. Devin Leary, proven guy, coming over from NC State. He was among the best quarterbacks in the ACC this year. Finished out this year with a 61% completion rate, throwing for 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 picks over 6 games before he got sidelined with a season-ending injury. We'll see how he does in the SEC, but very talented. Was among one of the best quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and now he is heading to Lexington to replace Will Levis. Also for Kentucky, they landed another big offensive weapon. They get the best quarterback available in the portal, and then they get one of the better running backs in the portal in Ray Davis from Vanderbilt. We talked about Raymond. He was a 1,000-yard rusher for the Commodores this year, scored 5 touchdowns, was 4th in the SEC in rushing yards. He had started at his college career at Temple before he went over to Vanderbilt, was a Kentucky target for the last couple of weeks, and a lot of rumors were that he was going to head there, with Chris Rodriguez heading to the NFL draft. And on top of that, Kentucky, also picked up offensive line transfer from Northern Illinois and Marcus Cox. So it's going to be some big pieces here for, we presume, Liam Cohen, if he's going to come back from the Rams to be the offensive coordinator. Going to be a little different looking at Kentucky, but some big weapons there with Ray Davis at running back and Devin Leary at quarterback. Congrats to Mark Stoops and his crew picking up those guys. Over at South Carolina, Trey Knox, big-time red zone target for the Arkansas Razorbacks, finished second on the team to wide receiver Matt Landers with 5 touchdowns. Or Trey Knox had 5 touchdowns, Landers had 7, but he decided to enter the transfer portal, look around, and on Tuesday afternoon, Trey Knox announced he's heading to South Carolina to go play for Shane Beamer. The Gamecocks lost Jaheim Bell to Florida State this offseason, and Austin Stogner transferred back to Oklahoma. Gamecocks did also bring in Florida tight end Nick Elksness, but they were looking for some proven game player production. And 4 years at Arkansas, Knox at 81 catches for almost 900 yards and 9 touchdowns. So going to be interesting to see. Of course, the tight ends coach from Arkansas last year, Dole Loggins, heading over to be the OC at South Carolina. So he's bringing Trey Knox with him. It's a big-time weapon to bring along. Some other news from the Arkansas side of things. Wide receiver Keytron Jackson, who had entered the portal, he officially announced yesterday he's headed to Baylor, so he will continue his career in the Big 12. And former Arkansas defensive back Kari Johnson, he has committed to play for Boston College. He was a 3-star defensive back in Arkansas's 2020 class, appeared in 10 games for the Hogs this year, and 3 seasons, finished with 17 games played in Fayetteville. So he's heading off to Boston College. Over at LSU, some news there. Jaquelin Roy, big defensive lineman on the interior for LSU the past 3 seasons. He announced last night he is officially heading to the NFL draft. Projected anywhere from the 2nd to 3rd rounder. So 3 years at LSU, he's ready to go on to the next level. Reports say he will not play in the Citrus Bowl for LSU, but had a nice year for them this year. 49 tackles, 3.5 stops for a loss, and started all but one game for them. So best of luck to Jaquelin Roy. Meanwhile, Cam Wire, offensive lineman at LSU that entered the transfer portal, he announced he is heading down the street to Tulane. So not going very far. Leaving LSU, he'll continue his career over at Tulane in New Orleans. LSU was very active in the transfer portal on Tuesday night. If you missed this, they added 3 names back to back to back. First up, they added Florida defensive lineman Jalen Lee. He is a Louisiana native, spent 3 seasons in Gainesville, played in 5 games this year, recorded a sack his freshman year against Mizzou. It had been rumored that he had been eyeing maybe coming back home to play for the hometown Tigers, so Jalen Lee going from Florida to LSU. Tigers also picked up Arizona defensive end Paris Shand. He spent past 3 seasons with the Wildcats in Arizona. He's a Canadian native, recorded 5 sacks in his college career. And after that, they added Oregon defensive end Braden Swinson. Swinson has spent 3 seasons at Oregon, played 5 games this year, recorded 3 sacks last season. So 3 big defensive pieces there for LSU, adding through the transfer portal. Meanwhile, over at Florida, the Gators losing reserve linebacker Chief Borders to the transfer portal. He announced on Tuesday he has had to go play for Matt Rule and Nebraska. So he's headed there. Meanwhile, over at South Carolina, we know that Shane Beamer is losing Devonnie Reed. He transferred in from Central Michigan. South Carolina had a 4-year starter for the Chippewas at Central Michigan. Brought a veteran presence to the South Carolina secondary, made 39 tackles, played 11 games, started 7 games at safety. He announced he will be entering the NFL draft. We'll wait to see if he'll play in the Gator Bowl, but most guys declaring for the draft are not playing in these games. Former Missouri linebacker Zach Lovett has announced he is headed to play at Iowa State. Former Alabama offensive lineman Tommy Brockermeyer, big 5-star recruit, came out of the state of Texas. On Tuesday, he announced he is headed to TCU. 6'5", 304-pound freshman, played sparingly in 2 seasons in Tuscaloosa. He's going to join a bevy of SEC guys over there at TCU. He's got Alabama teammate wide receiver JoJo Earl, former LSU wide receiver Jack Besh, former Florida DB Avery Helm, and now Alabama offensive lineman Tommy Brockermeyer, all going to TCU. Former Auburn offensive lineman Keandre Jones, he announced he's heading to Florida State. How about former Florida defensive lineman or Vanderbilt defensive lineman Elijah McAllister? He's staying in the SEC. He's going to play for Hugh Freeze at Auburn. So congrats to Elijah McAllister coming over from Vanderbilt, going to Auburn. He announced on Twitter, it's time to get back to playing that brand of Auburn football we all know and love. Committed, #War Eagle. He's a 6-year senior. Auburn now has landed 2 commitments from the transfer portal with the addition of FIU tight end transfer Rivaldo Fairweather on Sunday. Some other news, Kentucky losing a handful of guys to the transfer portal. Wide receivers, DeMarcus Harris announced he is headed to Marshall. Wide receiver Chris Lewis is headed to Troy. And wide receiver Chauncey Magwood is headed to UCF to go play for Gus Malzahn. Meanwhile, over at Mizzou, Eli Drinkwitz, active in the transfer portal as well. He picked up former Northwestern defensive lineman Austin Firestone, a 3-star member of their 2022 recruiting class. He recorded 3 tackles, 1 for a loss in 3 games played at Northwestern this year. And a quick SEC baseball note. The SEC, one of the more dominant conferences in college baseball, the collegiate baseball poll was released yesterday. Here was their rankings. Number 1, LSU. Number 2, Florida. Number 4, A&M. Number 5, Tennessee. Number 7, Arkansas. Number 9, Vanderbilt. That's all in just the top 10, 6 SEC teams. Then you got Mississippi State at 22, Ole Miss at 24, and they go all the way down to rank Auburn 37, Georgia 39, South Carolina 47, and Alabama 49. That's 11 of the 14 SEC teams coming in their top 50. By the way, the past 2 national title winners coming from the SEC in Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So we'll get into some more SEC baseball talk as we get into the spring, but that was pretty impressive seeing all those SEC teams ranked there. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to get into who to watch today on National Signing Day around the SEC. But first, this episode is presented by our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline, your number one source for your sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. You can get all the latest odds and trends for every pro and amateur league out there, from pro football to, of course, the college bowl season, which is really starting to heat up. We're going to have a ton of SEC bowls going on all next week, and you're going to want to be able to keep up to date with all the action that's going on. They have got you covered over at BetOnline.net. They're always the fastest and easiest way for you to get your betting information. I always tell you, go bookmark it. It should be the first place you head to every morning and go check out all the information that you need. That is betonline.net. Head on over to their website today. You can do so on your mobile device and learn more there. It is BetOnline, and it is where the game starts. Again, find all the latest news, odds, and scores at BetOnline. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC, and we got plenty to get into with National Recruiting Day. So let's jump into it. Just a couple of names, and names we'll be watching some schools today with announcements coming either today or in the coming days. And we'll start with the Alabama Crimson Tide. There's really two big ones today. Quay Russaw, big 5-star defensive end from the state of Alabama, number 3 overall edge rusher in this class, number 22 overall player in the composite rankings. Georgia, Auburn, and Florida all high on his list as well. But Quay expected to go to Alabama. Another big one, James Smith, 4-star D lineman from the state of Alabama as well, rated the number 18 player in the country, number 2 defensive lineman overall. He's got offers from Auburn, Florida, and Georgia, but the Tide expected to land him as well. Now, both of those announcements are coming very early today, depending on what time you're listening to this. So I think around noon is when they'll be making their announcements. So Russaw and James Smith, big monster pickups there for Alabama if they lock those guys in. Another one to keep an eye on, 4-star corner Damari Brown. He is split between Miami and Alabama. So we'll see if the Tide can get him out of Florida or if Miami Hurricanes lock him up. Meanwhile, over at Georgia, the Bulldogs are hitting up the recruiting trail as they always do under Kirby Smart. And a couple of names to keep an eye on there. The number 13 player in the country, defensive end Damon Wilson from Venice, Florida. Ohio State has been coming after him hard, but many expect a Georgia commitment. He will announce this afternoon. So Damon Wilson expected to be a Georgia Bulldog. Cornerback Daniel Harris also expected to head to Georgia. He will make an early morning announcement. He's choosing between Georgia and Penn State, but it sounds like it's going to be Georgia there. And then number 73 overall recruit, D lineman Jordan Hall from the Jacksonville, Florida area. He is a heavy Georgia lean. Florida State's been coming after him. He is expected to announce on Thursday at 2:30. So he won't expect to be a Wednesday announcement. Sounds like he'll be a Thursday announcement. Jordan Hall out of state of Florida. Sounds like he'll be a dog. Over at LSU, Brian Kelly, all eyes are on the number 23 player in the country, 5-star defensive back Desmond Ricks, the number 2 corner in the country. Also likes Alabama and Florida, and a lot of Alabama fans are optimistic that they may be able to get him. See if LSU can wrap him up. He is also expected to commit on Thursday afternoon, so I'll have to wait on him. A couple other ones to keep an eye on for LSU, 4-star defensive end Joshua Mickens, who had once been committed to them. He's a big Ohio State lean, but LSU still trying after him, so we'll see if they have a chance there. And then 4-star safety Isaac Smith. He is expected to sign with LSU. Mississippi State still in on him, but sounding like he is headed to Baton Rouge. Meanwhile, over at South Carolina, Shane Beamer and crew, they are trying to lock up their recruiting class, and they got a really good one going so far. Number 16 overall player in the country, 6'5", 225-pound, 5-star athlete from the D.C. area, Nicholas Harbor. Keep an eye on him. Has high offers from Miami, Michigan, LSU, among others. But South Carolina trying to close in on Harbor. We'll see if they can get him. Over at Ole Miss, all eyes on 4-star wide receiver Caden Lee from the Atlanta area. Some think maybe UCF or Auburn could get him, but Ole Miss making a hard push. So we'll see Caden Lee if he ends up a Rebel. Wouldn't be a recruiting class if Jimbo Fisher wasn't in on a ton of people. Tony Mitchell, 4-star safety from the state of Alabama. He is an Alabama commit, but the Aggies are trying hard to flip him. Peyton Bowen is a 4-star safety committed to Notre Dame, but many think Oklahoma is going to flip him. A&M's got a slight chance there. And wide receiver Micah Tease expected to jump to A&M after he decommitted from Arkansas. It's a big 4-star edge rusher, Tausili Akana. He was busy this weekend visiting Louisville and Colorado, while LSU and A&M, Texas and Oklahoma are all trying to land him. His sister did just win a volleyball title with Texas on Saturday, but the crystal ball projections have him headed to Oklahoma. Some other SEC guys to keep an eye on. Wide receiver Carmelo English expected to announce this morning. He's down to Michigan, Kentucky, Bama, and Auburn. Many expecting Michigan, but Kentucky's got a chance there. Defensive end Tavion Gibson. He's considered a Kentucky lean, with Tennessee and Florida State in the mix on him. And defensive end Tadarius Collins, Mizzou and Auburn in the mix for him. So just some names there to keep an eye on. And, of course, we'll have announcements happening all throughout the day. We'll recap it all for you on Thursday's show of the podcast. So remember to keep it locked here to Locked On SEC. Thanks again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll talk about the guys who have just committed the last couple days, and that starts with Alabama's Caden Proctor. We'll get to that in just a second. More Locked On SEC coming your way. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC, and let's jump back into it as we're talking about the kids that have just committed here in the last couple of days as recruiting classes are shaping up. And we'll start with Alabama, the big one, Caden Proctor, the number one offensive tackle in the country, a former Iowa commit. On Tuesday afternoon, he flipped his commitment to Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide. He now represents Alabama's third overall commit in this class, as well as their fourth 5-star commit. Big-time offensive tackle prospect in the nation. Number one player from the state of Iowa. Number 5 overall prospect in the class of 2022. He was the number one commit in Iowa football history before he flipped Tuesday afternoon. Had been committed to the Hawkeyes since late June. Just to show you guys how dominant Alabama's been on the recruiting trail, Proctor was the number one overall recruit in Iowa football history. Now that he's flipped to Alabama, he's not even in their top 25 in the last 20 years. Just another guy. But Alabama currently holds the most 5-star commitments in this class with Caleb Downs, Keon Keeley, Caden Proctor, and Justice Haynes. They have a legitimate shot of landing 3 more in Desmond Ricks, Quay Rusaw, and James Smith. So, remember when Jimbo Fisher bragged about having the number one recruiting class over Nick Saban? Yeah, it's going to be Saban far and away this time around. There is some good news for the Aggies, though. They landed tight end Jaden Platt on Tuesday night. He had been committed to Stanford, and many thought Florida had a good chance to steal him. But on Tuesday night, the Aggies swept in and grabbed him. Jimbo Fisher loves his tight ends. Got a good one here in Platt. 6'5", 230 pounds. He is headed to College Station. And the Aggies now up to 14th in the country as of this recruiting. Among best recruiting classes, they are climbing from where they were just a week ago. People were saying, where are the Aggies? Here they come, trying to make a jump into the top 10. We'll see if they can. Meanwhile, Hugh Freeze, they landed a quarterback commitment on Monday or Tuesday from former Liberty commit Hank Brown. He's a 3-star quarterback out of Lipscomb Academy in the Nashville area. It offers from Vanderbilt, Illinois, Pitt, and UAB. Brown was committed to Hugh Freeze and Liberty, and now he's going to fall on to Auburn. He's considered the number 58 quarterback in the class of 2023. Number 33 prospect from the state of Tennessee. It's the second quarterback commit, joining Keon Jenkins out of Miami. So we'll see what happens there with the quarterback depth at Auburn. A name to keep an eye on for, or a name that is coming to South Carolina for Shane Beamer, a guy nicknamed Big Tree. Now, his actual name is Oluwatosin Babalade, I think is how you say it. I know I messed that up, but Big Tree, we'll call him. he is appears to be a solid commit for South Carolina. Maryland was making a hard push for him. He originally committed to the Gamecocks back in August, decommitted 2 weeks ago as the Terrapins were looking to flip him. But on Tuesday on Twitter, he announced his decision to recommit to Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. 6'5", 310 pounds, number 22 offensive tackle in the country. Big time get there for South Carolina. Also at South Carolina, one-time Miami commit, Reed McKeska, three-star tight end out of the state of Texas. He has announced a commitment to South Carolina. Had a ton of offers from other schools. Ranks as the number 45 tight end in this class. Shane Beamer and South Carolina doing some work. They are currently inside the top 20. I think they're up to number 16 as of this recording on the 24/7 Sports rankings. And another good pickup for Auburn, Quintrell Jamison Travis, number 3 JUCO defensive lineman in the country, 6'4", 280 pounds, Minneapolis native. He is committed to play for the Auburn Tigers, ranked as number 18 JUCO player. So pick up for them and pushed Auburn up into the top 25 as of this recording. So defensive line, 7 players expected to return from last year's team for Auburn. So they're trying to add as much as they can. And we'll see what Jamison Travis can do for Auburn next year. So just to keep you guys abreast of where we are as of this recording. Again, a lot's going to change here in the next 24 to 48 hours. But Alabama sitting at number one recruiting class in the country. Georgia not far behind them at number 2. Miami is 3. Texas is 4. LSU at 5. Notre Dame sits at 6. Ohio State 7. Oklahoma 8. Tennessee, number 9. Clemson 10. And then rounding out the rest of the SEC, Florida coming in strong at number 11. So we'll see if they can get into the top 10. Finish strong for Billy Napier and crew. Like we said, A&M all the way up to number 14. South Carolina at number 16. Arkansas at number 20. Auburn at 23. Mississippi State picking up some names here in the last week. They're up to 26. Ole Miss kind of hanging around at 32. Lane Kiffin trying to make a push here. Add some more names here this week. Mizzou comes in at number 37. Kentucky all the way down at number 44. And Vanderbilt coming in at number 48. So there you have it. Those are the SEC schools and their rankings as of this recording. But, a lot of stuff can change here in the next day or so. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. It's been Locked On SEC. Be sure to come back tomorrow. We'll be talking about all the big news and the big commitments. Were there any big surprises? Heard Auburn and A&M could be getting some surprise guys here in the next day. So we'll see if that happens. And we'll recap it all right here on Locked On SEC.